Today I want to invite you along as I worked with one of my sweet clients to revamp a space that was not working for her and convert it to a space that she needed it to use for homeschooling and schooling purposes. So my client, let's call her M, she had this cabinet downstairs is in her entryway, and it currently was filled with games in the bottom, and then the pull-out drawer at the top was full of items of varying things, and most of them did not have a home. And so this kind of was like a big junk drawer for her. She didn't know where to put it, and so unfortunately I did not get the before picture to be able to show you, but the bottom of the cabinet was filled with games, and then the top drawer was kind of a big catch-all for items she didn't know what to do with. So her boys go away to school like a couple days a week, and then the other days of the week they are at home doing their work homeschooling. And so she really needed a space that could house their schooling stuff as well as kind of her teacher mom supplies. As it was, when I came into the house, she had things like staplers, hole punch, paper clips, but they were scattered throughout the house in different areas of the house, and she really didn't have a space where those were all collected so that as she's helping grade papers, as she's helping her kids with their work, she could easily access them. And so what we did was we consolidated all of the supplies and gave her a space in this cabinet so that when she needed her teacher supplies, her grading supplies, her the things that she wanted to help with crafts like hot glue gun and stuff like that for their projects, but she didn't want the kids to have access to. And so we made a space for that in this cabinet.
But first, if you want to know my exact method for conquering clutter and creating a calmer, more organized home, grab my free Simplify Life Decluttering Guide by clicking the link in the description box below.
So what we worked on today was removing the games and rehoming them to a different area of the home. We also worked on emptying the top catch-all drawer, and we went item by item and decided where those things needed to be homed, or if she needed to declutter them or use her safety stock box. So in the process, she was able to get rid of 28 things, and I'm so proud of her. Now today was a little less about decluttering and more about working with the home systems. So she knew most of the things she actually needed for this boys' school this coming year. So we didn't do as much decluttering today. We really focused on creating systems that would help her as they're going throughout their school year. Because she explained to me one of the pain points last year is that some of the schoolwork was upstairs, some of the schoolwork was downstairs, and there was a lot of times that they would be looking for things because they didn't really know where the item was. And so today we worked on creating homes and systems for housing the boys' school stuff. So I use the word systems as, think like organizational system, like where is the item homed? And so a lot of her items in the top drawer did not have a home, and so we actually found homes for them in different parts of the house based on where she used those items. And in regards to the homeschool stuff in the bottom of the shelf, we assigned a home to the categories of needs. And so on the top shelf, you're going to see M's teacher stuff. Her, as mom, as parent, as teacher, she has her supplies up there. She has her books for both of the boys. She has a pencil sharpener that's actually going to be plugged into the wall, so if at any point they can come sharpen their pencil really quick, easy access without having to take it out and plug it in on a daily basis. And things like her her 3-hole punch, which is kind of big and bulky, something she doesn't need all the time, but she knows where it is. It's with her teacher supplies, easy access. And then on the bottom, you're going to see the boys' stuff. And then also on the top, there are some art supplies that she wanted to use with her younger daughters that she did not want them to have access to. So this cabinet is off limits. So your system is, where is the item stored? Where is it homed? And that might mean it's in a bin, in a cabinet. That might mean you have to open the cabinet to pull out a drawer. It might mean that you just have to set it on a shelf. It might mean that you have to open a cabinet, pull out a drawer, and then open another bin. Systems is, where is it homed? And you can make systems with high barriers or systems with low barriers. So today we really worked on making a low barrier system so that her boys could easily just set their books where it needs to go. They could easily take the thing off the top. You'll see we have a couple of books stacked, but they're generally going to use all those books in one session, and so they can just kind of take the stack with them, use the books at a time, one at a time, and then place the stack back. Generally, I try not to stack things too much because it can make the items in the middle, on the top, fall if you're grabbing something in the middle. And so we talked through that, and she said, really, when we do school, they're going to need these all at once. And so we're just going to have them take the little stack. Now, we could opt for like a little, kind of a little open bin that slides in. It's kind of like a little bucket where those things are stored, and she might choose to do that in the future, but today, based on the items that she had in her home, this is the setup that we ended up going with. So today we worked on coming up with systems for their homeschool stuff, as well as we talked through habits. So habits are the way that we implement the systems. And so for her, she is, over the coming couple of weeks, going to be training her boys as they come home and they're getting their school stuff. They're going to take it out from here. When they are done with the school stuff, they will place it back where its home is. And this is a habit that over time will start to become muscle memory. Remember, again, the average habit takes at least 66 days to form. Some people it's more, some people it's less, but the average is about 66 days. And so it is going to take a little bit of time, but over the next month or two, her boys will start to quickly realize where their school stuff goes, and it will be easy to put it back. And there will be no searching for school items. There will be no wondering where their books are because it's going to be in one central location. Another habit that she's going to have to implement is with her younger two daughters who are not in school yet. And so the habit for them is this cabinet is off limits. Don't touch, don't open. Now that's easier said than done. And there may be a couple of times, we talked through this, there may be a couple of times where the kids get in and pull stuff out. For the first few weeks, she'll have to be really aware of this. In fact, we talked about unplugging the pencil sharpener just so that no little fingers go in there. But just like in my home, this is what I did also with my pencil sharpener that was plugged in. I had it unplugged for a little while until the habit was set and I felt confident that the kids would stay away, stay out, and not put their fingers in. And then once that habit is set, we don't have to worry about it too much. Then now for me, the pencil sharpener stays plugged in all the time. And so that is the goal that she's going to work towards. But again, it does take a little bit of work, especially with younger kids.
Hey friend, if you're feeling overwhelmed or anxious by the clutter in your home and the chaos that it brings, and you're ready to discover how my Simplify Life approach can transform your daily life, then listen up, my friend, because I've actually opened a few spots in my calendar this week so I can guide you through decluttering and creating simple home systems so that you can reclaim your time and your peace of mind. So if that sounds interesting, make sure to pause this video, go down to the link in the description box and secure your spot there, and then come back because we've got more good stuff in the video. Go ahead, I'll wait. I'll meet you back here in just a sec. If that's not interesting to you, no worries. Let's head back to the video.
Another thing that we talked about is she might have the perfect system, but if she does not help enforce the habits that go along with the system will always fail. And I recently talked about this in another video on school drop-off zones. If you haven't seen that video, make sure to click up here. So when you have a family with kids, you've got to adapt the systems to the kids' ability, to their height level, to their skill level. And so we made sure that everything that needed to be accessed by the kids in this homeschool cabinet was able to be accessed by the kids in the cabinet. If we had put the books way up high on a high shelf, the younger boys would not be able to get to it. So you want to make sure for your system where you're housing the item that everyone who's intended to use the item can actually reach it and get to it. So once you have the system in place, you want to make sure that you have an appropriate habit to keep that system maintained. So the habit that we talked about helping her system work is each time that the kids do school at home, if they will take the 60 seconds to 3 minutes just to pick up their stuff and put it back where it goes. It really shouldn't take long. And if they make the habit of doing that each time, that will train the kids When I'm done with my stuff, I put it up. And honestly, as I have started to implement this with my own children in our home, it's taking a while, but the lessons that I have helped, the habits that I've helped my kids to develop in one space are starting to trickle over and affect other spaces of the home. And my kids are getting more and more and more familiar with, oh, it's reset time, it's time to put it away. So I promise the more that you do this, the more that you implement consistent habits, it becomes second nature and muscle memory, and no longer do you have to nag or ask over and over and over again. So if you are the parent that is struggling with asking over and over and over again, I want to encourage you to put time and effort into making systems and habits and then reinforcing those habits. So one of the things that my client M talked to me about today was she was surprised how long it took to go through this space, but she was also surprised at how many questions we were talking through that she just did not think about. She said it was really helpful for you to be asking me questions along the way. She said, it honestly surprised me how many questions I hadn't thought about. She said, I hadn't really thought about how the system works. This isn't something that I was thinking about. And I loved this moment. We had been clearing out that kind of catch-all drawer before starting to put the homeschool stuff in. And I was reminding her that this feels awkward to all of my clients, but my suggestion always is to deal with the item in full. And so if the item in that catch-all drawer belongs upstairs, I actually have my clients stop what they're doing and walk and take it upstairs, because really the item that they are dealing with now was an item that they once said, I'll get to it later. And that's why it becomes clutter, right? It's the item either that you don't know what to do with it, or you haven't taken the steps to put it home, put it away in its home. Habits, right? And so we deal with the clutter now, because then it is one less decision, one less action to take later. And so it feels a little awkward at first because you feel like you should be making like all of these piles. But when we do that, then we have these mountainous piles of things that we have to deal with later. And so I had encouraged my client and just gently reminded her as we came to a couple of items whose homes were upstairs in the bathroom or upstairs in the reading area. And so she would stop and take those things and go put them up. And I always get this from my clients. She's like, right now? Like, stop and do it right now? And I'm like, yes. So I loved this aha moment that my client had later as she picked up a piece of paper and she went and almost went and set it down in another part of the house. And she stopped herself and she said, I realized I was about to go do it. I was about to go set the thing down like in another room and make a pile. And so she said, I'm stopping myself. I'm realizing I need to either go do what this paper says now. It was like a cute little hang it on the door for the first week of school. So she's like, I either need to cut this and go hang it on the boys' room now, or I need to get rid of it. And I was like, yes, that's exactly it. And so it took her about 15 seconds to deal with the item, to cut it out and go put it up on the boys' door. And then it was done. And it was not clutter on a different counter in a different room. And so I want to encourage you, when you are using my trim decluttering method, on the places where you are walking the item to go deal with it, you're rehoming it, or you're giving it a home and assigning it a home, and you're going and putting it in its new location. Rarely does it take the 5-10 minutes that we think it's going to. Usually it can be done in a matter of seconds to maybe a minute or two. But I just want to encourage you that this is the moment to deal with the item now. If it has been clutter in a closet, clutter on a counter, clutter on a pile on the floor, it's because at some point along the way, you set it down and said, I will deal with it later. And so my friend, I just want to encourage you that if you take the few seconds to deal with it now, it then is taken off of your to-do list, and you do not have to deal with the item later. And so freedom comes. Maybe you don't have hours and hours and hours in a day to declutter and purge and deal with rehoming things and finding things home, but you should have 5 minutes, or you could probably take 10 or 15 minutes. And if all you do is take 10 minutes to put items back in their home, or to go assign a home even if it's one item, that is now one item that is not causing visual clutter in your common space. And so I know it might feel counterintuitive, but I beg you to try taking the item and dealing with it now. Whether you have 60 seconds while your pasta is waiting to boil, or whether you have 30 minutes before you have to get the baby up from their nap. I promise, if you will deal with the item now, you will find over time that you have less visual clutter out and less to deal with. The boys had a ton of books that they were actually going to be referencing throughout the year, and what I suggested to her was taking the books that she knew for certain they were going to need in the next couple of months, or maybe the first semester. I let her decide the time frame, but that is what that small stack of books is on this bottom shelf that you're going to see. And what we did was we took all of the other books that are going to be used throughout the year but are not going to be used on a daily basis, and we put them into this box, this little fabric bin. And so they are all right there throughout the year as the teacher assigns the new book to read or the new workbook to do. As they move on from part 1 to part 2 in their workbooks, they have access to all of those things right here. But because they are not used on a daily basis, it's a little more out of sight, out of mind. And she doesn't have to dig through all of that stuff every time, or the boys don't have to, every time they sit down to do their schoolwork. And so what I would commend to you, especially if you're working on a school drop zone, if you do not need all of the items on a daily basis, then try to put the reserved stuff, the stuff for future use, in a categorized and grouped together and off to the side a little bit. Now, like her cabinet, she still kept it in the cabinet. She didn't take it to the attic. So it's very easy access. But as they finish one of those books in that middle stack and they no longer need it, they can put it in the fabric bin and they can take out the new one that they're going to use. So when you're making a system, it is so important to try to keep the daily essentials front, easily visible, easily accessible. Now, another thing that you're going to see is there was a couple of binders. And again, we were working with what she had on hand in the moment. And so what I was recommending was to not stack the boys' books on top of the 3-ring binders, because the 3-ring binders, at least at this point, are still very angled. They're not that full. And so it's very angled, and it's going to make the books slide off and just kind of look like a mess. Now, one thing that does work is if you can get a divided paper tray and you can dedicate one item to each tray. This is a way that you can kind of stack and visually use the vertical space within a cabinet without having things falling down while you're trying to take them out. So if you're needing an option where stuff goes up high, specifically like books or notebooks or binders, try using a paper tray with multiple dividers so that you can dedicate 1 or 2 things to each shelf, and it won't create a big avalanche coming down. The other thing that you're seeing us do in this video is we are actually going through and setting up the binders how the school required them to set up their binders. They had explicit, clear instructions on what needed to be included in the pencil pouches and where it was to be placed in which binder. And so we are going through and following those instructions. Now, again, we talked through and she said, should I do this now? And I said, yes, because the reality is she now has a completely set up space and they are ready to go for school next week. She doesn't have to think about it anymore. She doesn't have to go, oh yeah, I need to get that thing or do that thing. And so we dealt with the item and put it where it needed to be. And that included opening up the spare paper. That included filling the binder with the filler paper and the dividers. And those things are now done and it is not on her to-do list. So again, as you are working through your own home, remember just to take care of the system now. And it's okay if you only get partway through. In fact, her kids happened to be home today. And so we had to pivot a little bit as kids needed stuff. And so it's okay if you have to stop and not finish the project, but because we're not making big piles, she didn't have extra piles that she had to deal with. At the end, all she had was some boxes to recycle, which I helped her break down, got them to the recycle, a bag of trash. She had one or two items to donate, and then one keepsake bin. So we did come across an item that was keepsake bin worthy, and she wasn't really familiar with this concept, so we talked through it. Some people call them memory bins, some keepsake bin. I prefer to use keepsake bins. But one of the things that I recommend in my trim method is having an assigned keepsake bin for each person in your home. Now, this is probably the one instance where I actually do recommend a bin with a lid that can be shut, and so that it can be stacked. So we have 6 people in our home. Our bins take up about this much in one of our closets. And so what this does is it creates a space where anyone in the family can put something that is special to them. Now, some things are special and need to be left out. For instance, these vases are so near and dear to me. They were my husband's grandmother's, and I love them, and they're one of a kind, and I love leaving them out and looking at them. And I don't want them away in my keepsake bin. But there's other things that I don't want to stare at every day. Like I had a souvenir from a travel trip or something like that. I want to keep it. I'm not ready to let it go, but I don't want to look at it every single day. And so what I love about a keepsake bin is it gives a special place where no one else in the family can say whether or not they think it's valuable. If it is valuable to my 4-year-old, if it's the rock that he picked up at the gas station and it's valuable to my 4-year-old, then we can put it in his keepsake bin. And I don't have to try to convince him that it's not valuable. And for the bin itself, at some point, my child will put in enough things that the bin is full. And at that point, the container, the bin, becomes the bad guy and not me. It's not me going, oh, no, you can't take that. It's, oh, you want to put that piece of paper in? Okay, well, let's go look at your keepsake bin. Oh, honey, the keepsake bin is so full. I'm afraid that this bin is not going to close. So if you want to put that paper in, you're going to have to choose something else to take out. And I can put the monkey on the back of the bin, so to speak, and not be the bad guy. And it's worked wonders in my home. There is less arguing, less fighting about all the stuff that the kids think is so special and valuable that I just don't really want to keep in my house. And vice versa, right? Like they might not understand why I want to keep the things that I have, but they don't get a say because this is my special place. Well, friends, I thank you so much for watching through, and I was so excited that we got to accomplish our first goal in this space, which was getting a homeschool system set up so that she could have a decluttered, calm, organized space, and that she could homeschool her boys with ease. They no longer are going to have to search through the house. They are no longer going to have to look for books or look for the glue sticks because it is all consolidated into one space that's easy access for them and will be easy to put away each and every day. If you have any questions about decluttering or about home systems, I would love for you to reach out in the comments or DM me on one of my socials. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you back here next week as I release my next video. Until then, bye!